Hey friends, hey, I'm sitting here with friend Dr. Scott Robinson. We were just talking about COVID viruses, and I'm excited for today's episode because we're going to go through the science of viruses, your immune system, strengthening your immune system, and as you guys know, this is so important. So, Dr. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So we were just talking about COVID and viruses, and it's hard to navigate this situation right now, and really not step on the landmines of politics.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
100%.
Because this has become so political, and so we don't necessarily, as we're talking about viruses in COVID, we're not going to step on the landmine of political. However, it's hard not to talk about the truth, and certain people maybe not become offended. And it's hard not to offend certain sects of people right now. So we're not going to try to avoid that. We're just going to try to bring the truth and bring what it is to strengthen your immune system and live naturally.
100%. Sounds great.
Okay. So we're just talking about there's two different philosophies when it comes to the immune system. And we've seen the difference between patients. We see a lot of people in a given week, and throughout April or March, April, May, we saw there's a clear difference between those who recognized their immune system as something that could be strengthened and something that they had faith in their body. Strengthening their immune system was something they're trying to achieve, versus maybe someone who didn't believe that and maybe have been living in fear since then.
Yep.
And there is a difference when it comes to the philosophy of the immune system. And there is a philosophy when it comes to this.
100%. Whether you know it or not, there's two different camps, and you're in one camp or you're in the other. There's nothing in between. There's the germ theory of disease spreading or disease contraction, where you believe that there's these little tiny things that are out there that are just lurking, like trying to get you. And if you're exposed to them and they get inside, then you're going to get sick. Mm-hmm. And so there's germs on this computer, there's germs on my cup, there's germs on our hands. And if you were going to say maybe not get sick, then if you believed in the germ theory, you'd have to avoid all germs. Mm-hmm. And so what that would look like would be somebody who's constantly washing their hands, putting on hand sanitizer, somebody who maybe in this climate wears a mask, trying to avoid that pathogen from getting inside. And really that leads to just living in constant fear, whether you know it or not, because you can't avoid them.
And you and I both know people who really have not come out, or maybe not, really tried to stay inside as much as possible, really since March. And just think about that, about that person who right now is, let's just say, scared, rightfully so or not rightfully so. They are really attempting to avoid all contact with people. They're missing graduations, maybe even missing funerals, definitely missing birthdays, not getting maybe the preventative health care that they used to get. I mean, just think about that person who's really not living life right now. And a lot of this comes from a place of just maybe uncertainty or fear.
100%. I've seen this firsthand with my youngest brother. He and his wife, they both college educated, really intelligent people. She's a lawyer. He has a master's degree. And since March, they have not left their home. And so when you think about the fact that they've stopped going into the office, they now work remotely, they don't go to grocery stores, they don't go to movie theaters, they don't do anything outside of their home. They wear masks when anybody has to come to do anything. They stay very far away from them. My mother was in town. She wasn't allowed to come over. And you start to think about just the isolation, the intense fear that goes into a decision like that. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. I love my brother to death, but it's not necessarily the way that I would choose to take care of myself. Like, he missed my grandpa's memorial because he refused to travel and leave his home. So it's one of those things that you look back on, and I hope he can live with the decisions that he's made. I'm happy that he's safe, but it's one of those things that it seems overblown, especially with what we know now.
So there's two different philosophies. There's that of which, the germ theory, which is the germ itself is responsible for the disease. The germ theory does not recognize the host, meaning the person, and the strength of that person's immune system.
Yeah.
So in that model, just think about this. In that model, it doesn't matter what you eat. It really doesn't matter how you live, what you've been exposed to.
Well, why would you take care of yourself when there's something outside of you that's really affecting the outcome?
If it's all about the outside world that dictates your inner health, then it really doesn't necessarily matter outside of, the germ theory would say genes.
Absolutely.
It's all about your genetic makeup. It's all about what your family history is. And really your health is really no longer your responsibility, but can and should be maybe even controlled by an outside influence, what we would call outside in.
Mm-hmm. And so if things are broken, like if you have bad luck and your genes aren't strong, then you're also going to be reliant on medications or vaccines or some type of intervention that's going to, quote unquote, boost your immune system.
Mm-hmm. But the immune system really doesn't need to be boosted at all.
No.
The immune system is there. It's there for a reason. It's designed to, anytime there is a foreign invader, your immune system is intelligent and it has everything, it's equipped with everything to go in full attack mode.
Yeah, it's a perfect system. Just thinking about how intricate it is. You have different cells that do different things. You have T cells, you have B cells, you have natural killer cells. And I think sometimes when people think about whether they get quote unquote sick, it's like, do I have a cough? Am I sneezing? Am I running a fever? They see that as being sick. And oftentimes that's the immune system functioning to get rid of something that's gotten inside. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. And so there's a different philosophy then. There's the germ theory, which says it's all about the germ, nothing about the host.
Yep.
But there's a different philosophy.
So terrain theory is the exact opposite of the germ theory. It is 100% on the host. It's how strong is the environment? How strong are you internally? What type of resources do you have to rise to the occasion when you come in contact with something that maybe shouldn't be inside of your body? And so let's say you get exposed to bacteria or a virus of some sort, be it COVID-19 or any other virus. Because there's other viruses out there right now. Let's be real.
Wait a second. There are more viruses than COVID?
I know. It's crazy. But there are other viruses that are still there. There were viruses before. There'll be viruses after. And let's just say that you're exposed to one of those viruses. How strong is your response? How good is your body at detecting those foreign invaders? How good is it determining, is this self or is this something else? Mm-hmm. And I think that's really the part that people are missing, is that there is this internal environment that has the ability to get stronger. It has the ability to have a better response, not necessarily boosting, but regulation of. But it's a perfect design like we talked about earlier.
So think about this. Let's take the germ theory and terrain theory to their extremes. Germ theory, we're exposed to 16 to 1,800 different microbes right now in the mm-hmm. air, the indoor air that we breathe right now. 16 to 1,800 different microbes. So the germ theory taken to its extreme would be the elimination of all exposure. So that would be like living in a bubble.
That's stressful to even think about, like trying to eliminate that much stuff.
Well, and the question would be, is that person healthy? By eliminating all exposure, is that person going to have long-term immunity? Is that person going to be healthier over the course of time? Well, we know that answer.
I'd argue the opposite, that they're going to be worse off. It's like you never exercise that muscle. You mm-hmm. never get strong. Part of what makes your immune system get better is exposure to things. It has to work in order to overcome something small. That's part of the reason why kids put things in their mouth, like they're building their immune system. Mm-hmm. And if you never build that muscle, it's almost like trying to train for a marathon, but you never run. Mm-hmm. And then you go and you show up to the marathon. You're like, hey, I've got this. I'm gonna go knock this out. Mm-hmm. Except you've never run. Your muscles aren't strong. Your lungs aren't strong. You're unable to compete. And then you look and say, well, running's stupid. Mm-hmm. That's not how things work. You have to train. You have to expose your immune system to things to get better. You have to.